How many of you guys are familiar with Pawn Stars? If you're not, well, let's briefly introduce it to you. Pawn Stars is a series on History Channel which presents a family that's owned a pawn shop in Las Vegas for 3 generations. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the Harrison family. They've got pretty sharp eyes that can usually detect what's original and what's fake. They can distinguish between what's valuable and worthless. People come to sell their things at the gold and silver pawn shop, and then the Harrisons decide whether to take the deal or not. Sometimes, probably more than you'd expect, they ask for expert advice to avoid getting scammed. However, they've still gotten scammed several times. Today's video is about the top Pawn Stars deals that went horribly wrong. But before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 10, the comic books deal. Just because the families run the business for almost 30 years doesn't mean they're flawless. Sometimes they get confused and mixed up to the extent where a slip of the tongue makes them make some of the worst deals ever. For example, this comic book deal was counted as one of the most horrible deals that was ever presented on the show. A woman named Chelsea entered the pawn shop with several boxes of comic books. She claimed that she inherited the comics from her late uncle. She also added that she didn't know anything about these comic books, and she didn't know what to do with them. Therefore, she decided to sell them, because what was she gonna do with them? Her price was pretty expensive, which indicated that the content of the boxes must have been something valuable. Chumley concluded that the comic books dated from the 70s or the 80s. Chelsea, the owner of the boxes, wanted $2,000 to sell the books, but Chumley tried to bargain with her, and his bargaining is pretty good.
But with that being said, pretty sure I can.
He managed to get the price down to $50 per box, which in total was $350. However, after some more negotiation, the total was brought up to $500. So the opportunity was pretty attractive to Chumley indeed. Plus, the lady wanted to get rid of the books, and she had no other option but to accept the deal. Unfortunately, when Chumley later discussed the matter with an expert, he realized he'd made a horrible deal. The expert told him that the comics were only worth about $200 since they were made of recyclable paper. What a shock, but hey, at least he paid $500 instead of the $2,000.
You just gotta take them. I'm gonna do the 500. I'm gonna show you.
Number 9, 1961 Fender Stratocaster. In Season 8, a studio musician named Vic came to the Pawn Stars to sell his 1961 Fender Stratocaster. The guitar was invented by Leo Fender and had a pretty rich history since 1954, and it hasn't really changed much in terms of design through the years. Vic had apparently watched a lot of videos by Jimi Hendrix playing on this iconic guitar. Rick bought the guitar for $55,000. Pretty steep, right? However, Rick found out that the owner of the guitar wasn't really a legendary musician, and most of the songs that were recorded on this guitar weren't very huge, except for the James Bond theme. So he decided to sell it at an auction since no one wanted to buy it with a price tag of $90,000. Then at the auction, the guitar only sold for $20,000. That was a huge loss for Rick, who'd bought it for $55,000. He lost around $35,000. Those are some pretty crazy numbers. Indeed, that was a pretty horrible deal. Number 8, Shekel of Tyre. What is a Shekel of Tyre? Well, it's a silver coin which was first made in Tyre, which is part of the Roman Empire. It was an important currency which the Romans used to pay the Roman temple tax. Tyre is now Lebanon. The face that you can see on the Tyrian shekel is a fusion of Melkart and Baal, the Phoenician gods, and Hercules, the Greek demigod. Also, there's an Olympic laurel on his head. 30-year-old Ryan Payne went to the Pawn Stars to sell his coin for $1,600. Ryan said, quote, "It was widely used in ancient Jerusalem and other Middle Eastern countries to my knowledge. But now here comes the surprise. After the Pawn Stars bought the coin, a detective came to the shop and told them that the coin was stolen. No, Payne hadn't stolen it, but the seller who sold the coin to Payne did. So the Pawn Stars were allowed to keep it since the original owner of the coin had been compensated by his insurance policy. So it was a loss for the Harrisons, since a valuable coin would cost $1,200, but this one had lost some of its value when it got cleaned up, and they lost the $1,600 they paid for it. Number 7, book signed by Shoeless Joe Jackson. A man named Pete came to the Pawn Stars, and Rick Harrison was blinded by the value of the product that he had. Pete wanted to sell a copy of the book Say It Ain't Joe, which was said to have been signed by the legendary player Shoeless Joe Jackson. Jackson was illiterate, and finding his signature on a book was a rare thing. So Rick negotiated with the seller and he bought the book for $13,000. But bad news was there to disappoint him. Rick asked Rebecca, a rare book dealer, and she told him the signature was totally fake. Now Rick was stuck with a fake autograph and the whole thing was absolutely useless. A pretty big loss, and a pretty unlucky situation too. Number 6. Willie Mays uniform. A man came to the Pawn Stars to sell a uniform which was worn by Willie Mays in 1961. Mays was a baseball player who was born in 1931 and had learned how to catch the ball before he even knew how to walk. Corey thought that the uniform was a rare opportunity and he had to take the chance while he had it to make his father proud. He bought the uniform for $31,000. Corey thought that the uniform had very minute details which made it valuable and precious, but there was something really noticeable that even Chumley could notice. The uniform looked like it was in very good condition. What's the problem? Well, the uniform was supposed to be 50 years old, but it looked like it was way younger than that. It was obviously not the original uniform worn by Mays in 1961, who always fell in the dirt to catch the ball. So they auctioned this fake uniform and it was sold for $19,000. The loss was pretty substantial. Corey made a big mistake when he was too excited to ask for a certificate or anything about the uniform's authenticity. Sometimes being too rash can have you pay the price. Sorry about that, Corey.
But I think my uncle would be impressed at the price that it.
Number 5. Strongbox, handcuffs, and ball and chain. An elderly man named Bill came to the Pawn Stars with the Wells Fargo Strongbox from the 19th century. The Strongbox contained handcuffs and a ball and chain that dated back to the old ages. But the Pawn Stars picked up something fake about it. They noticed that the chains were electrically welded, and it was impossible that a blacksmith in the 19th century would have an electric welder. However, Bill stuck to his guns and tried to convince them of the product's authenticity. After many negotiations, the Pawn Stars agreed to pay $450 for the Strongbox with all its contents. Bill, of course, had to either accept this deal or walk away since he wasn't going to get the price he expected. You can't make a deal with the Pawn Stars expecting to get exactly what you ask for. It was pretty obvious that the chains were electrically welded, and this led to some embarrassment on Bill's part, but at least he walked away with some profit.
To fantasy and told Rick that it was one of the most faked items out there.
Number 4. Gibson Mandolin. You'd think that after 4 seasons of the show, the Harrisons would learn to not leave Chumley alone at the shop to avoid getting into trouble and taking bad deals. One day when he was alone at the shop, a man came to him carrying a Gibson mandolin. A Gibson mandolin was a musical instrument made by Orville Gibson in the late 1800s. The man said that he got the mandolin from the yard sale and he hoped to sell it for a good price to make some money so he could take his family on a trip to Ireland. And guess who paid the price? Chumley. That seller came in at the right time to find Chumley by himself. Chumley praised the mandolin even though he had a similar one in the shop. He bought it for $1,500. However, it was pretty obvious that it was a fake Gibson mandolin. A friend who was an expert told Chumley that the mandolin was only worth $100. Can you imagine that loss? The old man must not have been too happy about this deal. Number 3. 1964 Austin Haley Sprite. In Season 2, a customer came to sell a 1964 Austin Haley Sprite. It was a small British sports car. It originally cost $1,800 and was designed to fit in bike sheds. The owner declared that the car was in perfect condition. He wanted to sell it for $10,000, but Rick negotiated until the price became $5,000. Seems like a pretty good deal, right? Well, when Rick took the car to a friend to fix some problems and make some modifications, he thought his friend would ask for a reasonable price. But this friend told him that it would cost him about $600 to fix the car. The old man was pretty angry with that deal. Oops. Number 2. Corey's unfortunate deals. Corey's learned the business since he was 9 years old, so he's gained a lot of experience, but he's still not as experienced as his dad or his grandfather. He didn't know what to expect and how to deal with the unexpected. He was stuck into a situation that proved he wasn't born under a lucky star by any means. In 1 week only, he bought about 6 fake Rolex watches and lost $4,000 in his bad deals, but he certainly learned a lesson. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way. Cubic zirconias. The late old man Harrison declared that he had a tough time detecting fake diamonds when cubic zirconias hit the market in the US in the late 70s and early 80s. It was really hard to distinguish the difference between a fake diamond and a real one. Harrison said nobody knew about him, and they tested his diamonds. Everybody in the industry bought a bunch of them. He himself lost almost $30,000. Thankfully, cubic zirconias no longer threaten the market, especially after Corey Harrison made a video about how to detect a fake diamond. It certainly helped a lot of people and jewelers. That must have been a pretty tough lesson for the old man to learn. So, after seeing our top 10 Pawn Stars deals that went horribly wrong, tell us what you think of them in the comment section below. Do you agree that they got scammed several times, although they're supposed to be really experienced? Make sure you let us know down below, and we'll see you next time.